welcome to another episode of Drinking with Geeks. I'm Roz.
I'm Matt, and this week we're going to do something a little new that we like to call
Dungeons and Flagons.
So when we play Dungeons and Dragons, we really like to try and bring beer or wine or something that we feel reflects the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy or epic or something. You know, just something that feels, it doesn't have to be directly related, but, you know. So this is mostly based on the label. But we thought it would be fun to bring that to our reviews online and review things with an eye towards drinks that you could choose for your game nights. Our first review is a product that, well, a company that when you see it, you'll understand why it sort of had to be the first thing we did, despite the fact that if you don't live in the Pacific Northwest, particularly BC, but maybe Washington or even down to Oregon, you're going to have a hard time finding this product. But it is a beer from a local brewery in Richmond, BC, which is technically not Vancouver, but for anyone who's not from the area, this is Vancouver. The brewery in question is Fuggles and Warlock. And in particular, we're going to look at their Icarus Mosaic Saison, which we've had a bunch. It's a really great beer. Fuggles and Warlock, the name. It's kind of a weird name. And the first thing you need to know is that Fuggles, the weirdest sounding part, is actually a type of hops from England. And interestingly, it's actually the least favorite European hops of one of the creators. He used to use it as a swear word, like when he'd just be like Fuggles, and then it became kind of a nickname for him.
I think my bard is gonna have to use Fuggles as a swear, like Ruby.
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty great curse word. And then Warlock is the nickname for the other fellow that started the company, and it's based after something from the Magic card game. So this is a super geeky brewery right off the bat. They super focus on it all the time. All of their labels are kind of geeky. One of them used to be a graphic designer, so it's always beautiful art. And it's just a great place to start.
Kind of anime inspired, like it's touched with the Japanese look of some of the art of especially the design of the characters that are on the labels. You can see the Icarus one. Yeah. I really like their strawberry wit. Similar idea with the art of the girl.
The last strawberry.
Yeah.
Or the last man, or whatever it's called. But it's very good.
Text will pop up.
Yep.
And so a lot of their labels have that, just they are fantasy AF to begin with.
Yeah, we've used some in our campaigns for nights, like their Rygard. One is, has this barbarian on the front. It's awesome, and it's made with rye.
So if you're in the Vancouver area and you play D&D, and we know there's a bunch of you out there, get some Fuggles and Warlock for your night. It's great.
Among many other things that we will cover, and we're going to try and grab some stuff, not just from local things, but it's going to skew towards, honestly, local beer, because that's where a lot of the funnest labels are. Thank you. That's where a lot of the labels that are most fun can be found, is on smaller craft breweries. So you're going to have a whole different range where you are. And show us pictures. Let us know. We'd love to see these things from all over. What do you bring to your game nights?
Or if it's particular, like if you have a night that's going to be really heavy, dark, and stormy, something big and important, and it's like a huge boss fight night. I mean, you might go something pretty intense. What kind of beer or wine do you bring to that night? If you drink at your D&D games. I mean, a lot of people don't.
We actually don't bring beer to our current campaign because a decent portion of the people we're playing with are gluten sensitive, so it just seems rude.
We drink cider. There's less of a exciting D&D cider market, so get out there and work on that, everybody who makes cider. Ooh, look at that pour.
Oh yeah, just straight into the bottom. Get the fizz out. Get the flavors rocking, get the aromas going.
You're going to spill onto your phone in a second here. There you go.
My phone's water resistant. Oh. I'm more concerned about the sound stuff that I just spilled on. My headphones are not water resistant.
Man, just as you pour, the aroma here is so beautiful. This is light, summery.
Citrusy, but with a bit of a bit of yeastiness under it, like you want in a beer, but lots of very fruity yeast. I just got it on my nose because that's how good and classy I am at all this stuff. You just can't take me anywhere. First sips.
Oh yeah.
It's good. There's a nice little bit of bitterness underneath it because it is, it does have the Mosaic hops in it.
And as we know, I'm a bigger fan of the bitter notes in our drinks and cocktails than Matt is. So this definitely satisfies my request.
And I would say this is really well balanced. This is not too bitter for me at all. It's an IBU of, it might not say on the bottle.
It has to say on the bottle.
It doesn't have to.
It doesn't?
No. 35 IBU. Craft just puts it there. Because it's not actual, it is a number that means something, but it's not, as meaningful as, people act like it is. It doesn't entirely describe how bitter something is, because there's also the balance of sugar, not just how much alpha acid is in it.
Okay.
Which is International Bitters Units, is what IBU is. Really well balanced, light, delicious, summery, fruity. Yep, a little bit of tart, some nice acid there.
The citrus. I could definitely crush a few of these while campaigning.
Totally. And would it be a problem? Well, it'd be a little bit of a problem if you crushed a few of these while campaigning. It is 7% alcohol.
Ooh.
So it's not maybe the most sessionable thing. And that brings us into what are the categories that we rate things on for
Dungeons and Flagons,
as opposed to our regular reviews. Yeah. You fucked that up. We were supposed to miss completely.
Okay. I'm sorry, I derailed the categories of a Dungeons and Flagons.
Category the first. Label art. Because, that's going to be a huge part of what makes this feel Dungeons and Dragons-y.
Much like when you're designing your character and you spend too much time drawing your character instead of figuring out what their stats are.
So this one, the label art is great. It's geeky. It's Icarus, so it's, a winged person. It gives a fantasy feel, but it's more mythological and anime. So it doesn't feel super Western fantasy. But fantasy is an ever-evolving genre and shouldn't be limited to the scope of Western fantasy, and neither should your D&D game.
Or your beer.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You do you with your game. That's the great thing about D&D. But I think in general, the traditional scope of Western fantasy is limiting, and I love.
We generally feel that way about fantasy as a genre in general, though. We like the idea that it doesn't have to be limited by what you think of, just because you've got the Lord of the Rings box surrounding your fantasy.
I love my elves and dwarves and dragons, but fantasy doesn't have to be that, and D&D and RP doesn't have to be that. But this isn't supposed to be moralizing, so let's get back to the drink.
Put something in your hand, and that'll help us carry on with about this specific one.
What are we doing for picture? 3.5? 4?
I think it's a 3.5.
3.5? 3.5 for picture. Second, name of the product, how fantasy does that name sound? For example, Icarus, not super fantasy as we've just discussed, but mythology does fit into the fantasy, so we'll call that maybe a 3 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. It's not left field.
No, Fuggles and Warlock I think always gets an extra bonus point,
or at
just
least
based on the brewery name alone, regardless of what the beer name is. So we'll bump their thing up to, we'll call it 4 out of 5 for name quality, D&D wise.
Because if you bring this out for your campaign and you're telling everybody that we're going to have some Fuggles and Warlock, as soon as you say Warlock, everyone's going to be like, woo!
Yeah, it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what the rest is. The next thing we'll rate this on is how much is it going to mess up your game? It's all fun and games to bring 10% Russian Imperial Stout that can get dangerous over the course of a few hours if you've got a bunch of those.
Especially if you're having one of those nights where people need to take the game a little bit more serious. You know, it's dangerous to bring something like that to a night where you need some intense, real... I'm gonna swear, right? I can swear. Some real shit to go down.
Yeah. At 7%
Clearly, I play
alcohol.
a few paladins, which is why I'm concerned about all these rules and swearing.
At 7% alcohol, it's not insanely sessionable, but it's also not going to destroy you. So I'd say
some of you maybe.
Yeah,
sorry.
It depends on the individual, but we're going on average here. I'd say that's a 3 out of 5.
Our rogue probably couldn't handle too many of these.
Probably not.
Sorry, Hillary.
And then the final, and some would say most important score, is actual like flavor quality and like how good is the beer. And this is where this one shines.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to give anything a 5 out of 5 because I feel like that seems like you have to really reserve it, but this one's really close.
Yeah, I would say just, you know, it's the first beer we're talking about. We don't want to give it a 10 right off the bat, so...
But it's close. Like, this is a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
For sure.
4.5 out of 5. So that brings our total score out of 20 to 15 out of 20.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's right. We'll calculate it later and make sure.
No, we were just laughing about people who can't add their dice.
I know. Dungeons and Flagons, drink appropriateness, D&D appropriateness rating. Dungeons and Flagons, D&D appropriateness rating.
We'll come up with an acronym that's catchy a little bit.
DFDDAR? Diftidar. Okay, it's not super catchy. We'll work on that. Diftidar, 15 out of 20.
Yeah. After having even a little bit of this, I'd be getting silly.
Yep. Which can be great.
It's excellent for role-playing.
It's excellent when you're a player. It's a little harder to be silly when... not to be silly, but to get silly, if you know what I mean, when you're the DM. Because you got to keep track of a lot of stuff.
I'm pretty careful when I DM that I don't drink too much.
I'm not as careful.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you also have a player called Caravas the Disinterested, so...
Yeah.
You get away with a lot more when you design your characters that you could show up and drink a lot.
Yeah, well, it's nothing compared to Doro the Drunken Master Monk, so...
That's true.
Yeah.
Who's down a finger now, so, I mean, use him as a guide.
You know...
Maybe do as I do and... no.
Do as I say. I don't know that you'd want to do as he says, either. I think you might just want to look elsewhere for
maybe I should not DM after a few of the Icarus.
Yeah. Alright. So with that... Cheers to the internet.